Hello, good afternoon. I think we're probably ready to start. So the timing, we aim to finish by 3:45. We're allowed to 3:45, and then it's tea break afterwards. We'll forget to say that at the end, so I'm saying it now. So back in it, when this is finished, away, back in here by 4. So I'm Sue Johnson. When I was asked to do this, I was the chair of Navish. Since that time, my role expired at the end of March, and I handed over to Carolyn. So Carolyn's the current chair. I'm the immediate past chair. So first of all, in case those of you who've never heard of Navish, I will just explain very briefly. So Navish is the National Association of Virtual School Heads. I was delighted to hear virtual heads have been mentioned quite a few times this morning, so it's like quite unusual really outside of we have a national conference as well. Outside of our conference to hear our role sort of talked about so much, so that's brilliant. So we are a charity that represents every single virtual head and virtual school in the country. And initially it was around cared for children. The remit and role has expanded somewhat. However, the focus of these 2 days is care, children in care and care leavers. So we work really closely with the DFE, with Ofsted, with big decision makers. We work with organisations like Fatima's campaign, working really to champion the educational experience of children who are in care. That's it in a nutshell in terms of our organisation. So first of all, hands up if you've heard of virtual heads or virtual schools before today. That's brilliant. Right, so quite a number. Hands up again, or keep your hands up if you are a virtual head. Woo, hello. So we've got, is that two in the audience, and three of us on the panel. So a virtual head then, so some of you don't know what we are. In every local authority in England, there is a statutory post, an officer who is responsible for promoting the educational achievement of looked after children. We basically champion our children's educational entitlement and their support needs. So we're really big on what cared for children, looked after children, what they should be getting in school, what support they should be getting, what they're entitled to. We do not believe that cared for children, looked after children should have a kind of watered down, second class, patchwork education. So that's our big push. We have a mantra, our absolute mantra, I would say, through every single virtual head, virtual school is, and this phrase has been mentioned earlier, would this be good enough for my child? So we are responsible for the education of all the looked after children within our local authority. We don't teach them. We're not a real school. We're not even a virtual school. We're not really sure why. The job title is a bit of a daft one. We're currently consulting on changing it, thank goodness. But we always say, would this be good enough for my child? And we use that phrase to challenge schools, carers, social workers, special needs departments, CAMS teams, anybody that is involved in a child's education. We will use that phrase really without shame. It is an emotive phrase, but we really want people to think, and even if you haven't got children yourself, you know, we're not all parents, you've got nephews, you've got nieces, you've got friends that have got children. If you knew that there was a real issue in school, that the school, there was bullying, there was suspensions, there was a child not getting what they should do, and it was your child, how would you deal with that? So that's really the thread that runs through all of we do. With a bridge between schools and children's social care, we would love to not have to be that bridge. We believe that, you know, really, those two professions, schools and social workers, should be able to work effectively together. In the vast majority of cases, they can and they do. But we are there just to in some ways translate the language of each of those professions. And we are change leaders. We really are constantly committed to making sure that school system, that the systems around children do support their needs, their individual needs. We don't treat looked after children as one homogenous group. They are all individual. And we are a commissioner really of a lot of support and resources. So we look at how we can work more effectively in that climate of reducing resources. And we are leaders of trauma-informed and relational practice. You will have heard that quite a lot, I think, today. We do believe that it is about that relationship. It's about recognising that children who are in the care system, their life will have not followed a smooth path. And you must always take into account that past trauma and current trauma. I think somebody else today has said, you know, just because a child comes into care, appears to be in a nice foster family, does not mean that all of the concerns, issues, problems, sadness, difficulties, trauma disappears. And that relational practice, we work a lot with schools around behaviour policies. Most of us hate the term behaviour policy. We fully support people having relationship policies, relational policies. So that's something that we do an awful lot of locally and nationally. And I would say in our roles as part of the wider system, the role has been in place 11 years now. And there has been progress made, without doubt. Measurable, in the stuff, there's been lots of progress in the soft areas, but measurable progress. Academic outcomes for looked after children have improved, but I would argue not enough. Suspensions, where schools are temporarily excluding a child, have reduced, but again, not enough. And permanent exclusions have reduced. They're actually quite rare. There's only a handful of looked after children each year permanently excluded from a school, but the way that the permanent exclusions are carried out, often it's just a placement in an alternative provision or a package, a fudge, and the child may not have been permanently excluded, but where they end up, they're still not going to get the outcomes they deserve. So against that backdrop, Carolyn will talk to you about some of the themes and explore what some of the issues and barriers are to truly levelling the playing field for our children. And we've got quite a large panel here. So we'll ask the panel and we'll get some ideas if we have time. We did think we were going to be in a nice room with lots of tables, so we've had to change what we were doing. And we're going to hopefully end up with some concrete solutions. So I'll hand over to Carolyn.
Thanks, Sue. So I'm Carolyn, I'm Liverpool's virtual school head. I do apologise for those of you who may not understand the Scouse accent. Unfortunately, there's no subtitles. So these are our workshop aims for today. We're just setting the scene to why education is so important. There'll be a panel discussion where we're going to share ideas and good practice and hopefully hear from you guys. And then we're going to try and create action points and pledges so that you can actually physically put it on the tree and take it away with you. So I'm just going to take us through themes, really. So why is it so important? Equity and opportunity. So often our children in care who are care experienced do not have the same level playing field as other young people, and they don't get the same opportunities. Their emotional and mental health needs, often, obviously, they've had disrupted attachments in their childhood, and they've also then experienced disrupted attachments with peers in schools and changes to placement, which increases anxiety and trust and so on, and can lead to struggles or poor concentration in school, and further then emphasise for them their self-negative view or perpetuate the sense of being different and not belonging. 50% of children looked after had a diagnosable mental health condition, which was the NSPCC research in 2022. So with that, facing that in your education system, often teachers and school staff struggle to support those needs because they're not trained, not everybody's trained with the mental health lens, and I think I'd always appeal as a teacher that that really needs to go into core teacher training so that everyone is supported with social, emotional, mental health needs, because every person has it. And it's so important for our care experienced young people. And because they do sometimes have behaviour that challenges adults, I'm not going to say challenging behaviour, it's behaviour that challenges adults, then they're often not given priority experiences, or it's a bit too risky to take them on those trips, and we find ourselves as virtual heads battling that. So it's thinking about equity and opportunity. Stability and well-being. We know that good education provides routine, structure, a sense of belonging, and helps mitigate trauma. In 2023, just 11% of children looked after had 3 or more school moves in a single year. So imagine that, just one academic year, 3 terms, 11% of children across the country move schools 3 times. What's that doing to curriculum? What's it doing to relationships with peers, teachers? And then they're having to start again and again and again. And then again as well, on top of school moves, you've got 31% experienced a care placement move, 21% 2 moves, 10% 3 moves or more, just in the place to live in. So you're thinking of this constant disruption and trying to mitigate, like provide stability and well-being. If young people are moving so much, how do we make them feel valued and a sense of belonging when they're constantly starting again? Big challenge for all of us. Aspirations and achievement. So Sue mentioned this a bit earlier. 2023 DfE data, only 13% of children looked after achieved GCSE grade 5 in English, in maths, compared to 50% of non-looked after peers. That's just unacceptable. I think in terms of aspirations, Sue talked about, we don't want curriculums watered down. We don't want our young people just being put into extra English and maths because that's where the core subjects lie. Often I find, particularly in Liverpool, children are fantastic at art and music and sport, and it's like, why are we just shoving it down, like shoving them down curriculums, which is narrow and makes them feel worse. So it's making sure you've got a broad, balanced curriculum filled with sport and music and art, which creates a sense of belonging and teamwork and so on. I think also with aspirations and achievement, we have to think about the language that we use. So the system, it sounds very clinical, a care placement, it's their home. You know, respite, actually, are they just going away for the weekend? You know, how are we thinking and shaping language? How are we shaping language about our young people? Because in turn, it impacts how people aspire or how they aspire. On this section, I'll also have to mention our children and young people with special educational needs. So there's 57% of children looked after have an identified SEND need, and 28% of those have an EHCP. But I'm not going to talk about this because I could take all day, but belonging regulations, which is when a young person who, say, for example, belongs to Liverpool and is a child looked after by Liverpool, moves to Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough would be in charge of their education, health and care plan, and because of the self-sufficiency crisis and all kinds of other guidance that non-virtual heads won't really understand, it creates massive drift and delay on getting an appropriate supportive education placement. We're rallying with DfE at the minute, trying to make change, because that is a huge issue, and then that obviously contributes to poorer outcomes, more young people with SEN being neat and obviously unemployed, and we know that that path is the one we need to change. Our children in the most vulnerable context, note I don't say vulnerable children, it's the context that makes them vulnerable, it's not the child, I don't label the child. So children in the most vulnerable context experience the most disruption and disadvantage. We need to reduce that disadvantage. Poor mental health, exclusions and social exclusions, like affirm negative stereotypes of young people. We need to really work to create safety, trust and ability to thrive in our schools and our settings. I think we heard from someone earlier this morning where they said about like someone taking a risk with the prisoner and giving them a role of value. You know, that's really important for our schools, for our young people, and often they take fantastic roles with younger children and peers because they take real pride in that. Legal and moral duty, it's just the right thing to do. Corporate parenting responsibilities, promoting educational success like they are our own children. And I think, like Terry said just before, this needs to be wider than just with local authorities where the corporate parenting duty lies at the moment. It needs to be embedded right across society and all employers and industries. Everyone should be taking that responsibility to make those adaptations to really support these young people. And breaking the cycle, education empowers care experienced children and young people to fulfil their potential. We really need to advocate for them and listen to their voice and let them shape the future. You know, it needs to come from them. We need to smash the stereotype of, you know, young people. Even when you see, like, you know, Holby City or dramas on the TV, you'll often see there's a negative kind of story around a care experienced young people. Well, we need to see those care experienced people like Fatima and other celebrities who've absolutely, you know, gone against the stereotypical norm, and because you can only aspire to what you see. So if we're constantly in the media showing them the negative, well, can we not start to really promote the positive? And then also we need to think about our own equality and diversity. Lots of young people from global majority backgrounds who have varying experiences, or send young people. And also you ask young people, or I prefer to call them separated children, because there is more to those young people than just an ESOL course in a college or the next ESOL course when you've passed that one. They've got such potential, and we need to aspire, and we need to support them to break the cycle and empower them. There we go, Sue. Next one. Trying to.
Hello, is that on? Yeah, brilliant. So hopefully this will work. So what we're going to do is going to ask our esteemed panel. I'm going to ask you in turn rather than going up and down the line. Just briefly, which organisation do you work for and represent? And we'll start with that, and then I'll ask you the question. So we'll start with you. That's Carolyn.
Thank you very much. My name is Gavin Oldham, and I run the Share Foundation, which is the charity which runs the Junior ISA and Child Trust Fund schemes for young people in care. And we've done that since 2012, and we've supported over 200,000 children and young people through that so far. We focus a lot on building life skills, and in particular, because of the insecurity and the movement between schools, really what we do is we aim to bring a scalable service through to young people, so that 15 to 17-year-olds can take what we call the Stepladder Plus program. It has 6 steps, and it focuses mainly on financial awareness, preparing people for adult life. And we've discovered that it's really much more effective if we incentivize every step. So what we do is, as young people take each step, they earn more money into their account. And we found that there are huge numbers who do take it. We've had 1,600 young people so far take the course, and 60% manage to do at least 4 steps as they go through it. And we've started to look at the NEET status when people leave now, and that has now reduced for these young people from the 39%, which you heard about earlier, to 25%. So that's more than half the way down to the national average of 13%. So we believe that it's making a real difference. And if there's one thing I would like to say from today is please look into the Stepladder Plus and use the incentivized learning program. It's available from every local authority throughout the United Kingdom and used actively within about 180. And so please do find more about that, especially if you're a virtual school head. Thank you.
Just probably keep this on, should I? Okay. So I will move down the line.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Andy McNaughton. I'm the founder and chair of trustees of the JAM Foundation. We are at the completely opposite end of the spectrum in terms of scale of some of the esteemed panel up here. We started a couple of years ago, a newly formed charity, very small, and we're just trying to find our feet, really. So it's a privilege to be here on the panel and learn from everybody, and the whole of the 2 days, really. So essentially what we do is we provide bursaries administered through the University of Hertfordshire, who we've been partnering for the last couple of years, to care leavers and those with care experience who aspire to go to university to train in vocations of social work, nursing, midwifery and paramedic science. Which is fantastic, and we've negotiated a lot of additional support through the university in terms of guaranteed halls of residence accommodation for undergraduates, for the full 12 months, so they're not kicked out at the beginning of the summer to make way for foreign language courses, et cetera, et cetera. So just to address some of those practical challenges, free laptop, additional support in terms of IT skills, general life admin assistance and things like that. Just a little bit more than just the financial assistance, which is obviously invaluable. But the feedback we get from a lot of the students is the belief, the confidence, the fact that somebody's sort of believing in what they're doing and believing in their potential knocked us sideways a little bit, because we thought it was just going to be the financial rewards of being awarded the bursary, but it seems to be far more than that, which is an additional bonus really for us in terms of how the charity's been received. So we've got a small stand at the end of the corridor on the ground floor, so I'd love to meet you and chat in more detail about what we're doing and find out more about what we're doing. But as I say, yeah, pleasure to be here and contribute in whatever way I can. But I feel a small fish in a big pond with some of my esteemed colleagues up here.
Thank you very much. Okay, go down the line.
Hi everyone, I'm Brian Fletcher from Youth Futures. I've been on a couple of panels, so I won't introduce myself again. I suppose on this topic, I was just going to say a couple of things. One, just to follow on from the really helpful overview that was given, is that unfortunately those challenges around education really follow on into work. So we did some research last year with NatSen, which showed that you're 3 times more likely to be not in education, employment or training if you haven't got GCSE levels. And that's actually the biggest predictor of ending up being NEET. And as we're hearing earlier, if a young person's care experience, their likelihood of getting their GCSEs is so much lower than their peers. And unfortunately, that then carries on because most of our system is based on the idea that GCSEs are a gateway to then further education and further work. So whether that be an apprenticeship, whether that be FE, whether that be university, that gateway is so important. And so my critical point I'd really make around this is the importance of course, trying to improve those outcomes, and it's really positive, and I know that there has been improvements made, but there's still a long way to go. But even accepting that we hopefully will see some of those improvements, we need to give young people second chances, because at the moment our system, to be honest, says if you don't get there at that point, we're pretty poor then at supporting people to then have those second chances. And I think that's a critical part that we need to focus on, because unfortunately young people who are dropping at that point, we then see that sort of lifetime impact, and that's something we can do something about.
Okay, thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Leah Morgan. I'm the Director of Programmes at the Royal National Children's Springboard Foundation, Springboard for short. We are a social mobility charity supporting children in and on the edge of care into independent day and boarding schools. It's pretty niche. We've been doing this as delivery partner with the DFE since 2020, but actually as a charity it's been something we've been doing for hundreds of years, but in its current guise since 2013 in its more modern structure. So since 2021 we've supported 250 children and young people in and on the edge of care into independent day and boarding schools. We do this because we do not represent the sector per se. We do not believe the sector is better than states or one is better than the other. We do it because there are some metrics within the independent sector, whether we're ideologically opposed or not, which we have to accept. And one is class sizes are smaller. Often in the schools we choose to work with, the pastoral offer is robust. The Senko offer is often very robust as well, and that's not to say it's not in the state, to be very clear. And the extracurricular offer is massive, absolutely massive, and you won't be surprised to know that we focus our efforts on secondary school aged children, recognizing that actually for the young people we all work for, it's often the secondary transition where we all know the stats around that. So we look to provide with the schools we work with, and we've got 2 colleagues actually in the room from schools today who work tirelessly with the children we help into their schools, and it's them the heroes really. We work really carefully with the schools and the children to see that transition and to ensure their needs are met in their next schools. And I'll just briefly talk about impact. I won't go on for ages. I'm from Bristol, so I speak really quickly, which is really helpful. And I will just say that what we have seen so far is our retention rate is 97%, so that means children staying to 18 in their school placements. They are 4 times more likely than the national average to get good GCSEs, so 5s and above. 86% of our young people go into university. It's not the only metric in the world, but we know when the counterfactual is so woeful, it's a pretty good metric for us to use. And most importantly, they're all pretty happy. 98% say they've made friends, tried new things, and are engaged in their school communities. So we're pleased with what we're doing. We feel that it straddles both education and social care, and we support local authorities to access fully funded school places using school bursary funding and or buy it, should they want to commission that.
Thank you. Suzanne?
Hello, I'm Suzanne Parrott. I'm the Executive Head Teacher of Achieving for Children Virtual School and one of the Associate Directors in Achieving for Children. And that means I go across 3 local authorities, which is it's a challenge, but it's a great delight too. And I think my journey, when I first became a head teacher of a virtual school, I happened to go to UCL. And I heard at a lecture that looked after children at 16. Of that group, 17% would be dead by 30. And that seemed astonishing to me and shocking and something I didn't know. And I went back and looked at our statistics, and at that time, which is now 9 years ago, we had 30 children who would be that 17%. And at 16, I soon realized that's too late. And we needed to start a great deal earlier. And that was before virtual schools had the responsibility for children in need. But I knew that it started with school and school stability. And from that was a plethora of different interventions, a lot of partnership working and talking, changing hearts and minds. And the 2 main things I would say as a virtual school head teacher are my responsibility, are putting in place an attachment and trauma-informed program into schools so that the narrative of our schools changes. We now have 85% of our schools who have done either our bronze, silver or gold award, or all 3. And that makes a huge difference because our children don't get excluded, they get suspended far less, and we have a really nurturing, supportive understanding of our children's needs in borough. The second strand of what I do and what virtual school heads nationally do is that change management across the system. And today is all about connecting. And that's something virtual schools have at the center of who they are, working as a bridge across different partners. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today. I hope you enjoy this session.
Thank you, Suzanne. Okay, moving down. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Rachel Grimwood and I'm on the board of an amazing charity called Lambourne, and it's east of London. My background is in education. I've been in education for 17 years now, and first came to Lambourne 12 years ago and saw how magical the place is. We've spoken earlier about sometimes we need to be outside of the system and we need to make things just a little bit more simple. And the centre is outdoors, 54-acre classroom, where children can come and be in the countryside, learn skills. There's no technology, so they have that detox from their phones, and they can literally strip away all the worries of what has gone on at school or why they're there, and find themselves. We've, as a board, recently started to look at the fact that children's lives have changed dramatically, especially since COVID, and there is a lost childhood. And now I'm quite old, and when I was young, you'd go off on your bike and you'd come home for tea. You weren't governed by your watch, or you'd have no pressures like that. Well, I think we'll all agree that childhoods now are quite complicated and they're different, and we have to move with the times. So at the charity, which Rob will speak more about in a minute, we do a lot of alternative provision. So we not only just work on the person's well-being and confidence and resilience, we help them to achieve and overcome challenges by gaining new skills, finding nature. You'll be amazed how many kids from East London will come out and don't know where their food comes from and never seen a cow, and help them just to literally to find themselves and to be able to grow in their confidence. Rob.
I don't know what you've left me. So, I'm Rob Gaylor. I run Lambourne End Centre for Outdoor Learning, which, amongst other things, is seen as alternative provision. We prefer to call it complementary because we're trying to support people to stay in the schools they're in, but give them an alternative at other times. And so it's reaching out and providing a provision for those people that don't necessarily fit into mainstream environments, of which there are a significant number of care leavers. So, as Rachel said, the involvement with animals, spending time growing things, adventurous activities, environmental activities, a connection to nature are all wonderful for improving health and well-being, but also raising lots of personal development, building self-esteem, confidence, resilience, and that's the aim of our programs, is to enable people to go back into mainstream environments by providing them with some of the soft skills that it's difficult to work on in schools. But most importantly of all, people come for those things. They're attracted to the centre for those things. But I think one of the themes that's come out throughout the day is they find people there that they trust and they feel a sense of belonging. And I think that really helps people with the transition as they come to leave school. As school finishes, they can still keep their involvement with the centre, and that enables them to transition into whatever comes next, but keep a connection. Hopefully you've seen our video as it's been showing, but those people that have now moved on to get jobs will still come back and talk about the success and how it's helped shape them in a way they didn't know it was going to when they were there and involved. It's something that's happened in the future, and they look back and see how that shapes. So I think that's one of the most important things I think that's come out, is that finding someone to trust and people feeling a sense of belonging.
Thank you, and thank you for that. I'm glad you said that about alternative provision, because I realised I was probably dismissive of alternative provision. I didn't mean to be totally dismissive. And I think that's a really good example of, actually, if alternative complementary provision is right for that child, it's right for them all the way along their education journey, not just when a school wants to get rid of them. So that would be what, my response to that I think there is definitely, there's a place for, different types of curriculum for young people. If it is right, it's right. At the moment, it's right, not when it's an end point with nowhere to go.
Completely, and it's finding the right provision. It might not be the outdoor environment, but our role is to try and get them back and engaged as quickly as possible, so that they can get through their GCSEs and other qualifications which they will need to help them succeed and to make the next steps.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. So I think just sort of thinking about managing the time and trying to involve you as a room, pretending you're on round tables with pieces of paper. I think if we just let's ask the panel, and I'm not going to go around, so you can just, whoever wants to answer this. So I think, what we do, we work really hard, don't we, all the time, and we keep doing things, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, sometimes we keep doing the same things that don't work. What do we just need to stop doing? Who wants to answer that? In terms of education, getting outcomes better for our young children, what do we just need to stop doing? Anybody from the panel can answer that. Suzanne, I can see you desperate to.
I think this is on. Yes, and it's not an easy one. We can, as virtual schools and as schools, we can put our children on a course to high expectations. We can get them to be at university as much as their counterparts who are not in care. But we can only do that if they are in the same school throughout their secondary career. And unfortunately, through no fault of our dear partners in social care, our children have to move placement to placement because there is a national insufficiency of foster care. And when we look at the stats that we could be laying at the door of schools, we really need to think, well, why are those children not succeeding in school? And very often it will correlate with the amount of placement and school moves that they've had. So I would say if you are working in a local authority or if you're in any way connected, just ask people to think twice. Is there any way that there's a placement nearer to that young person? Could training go in place to secure the current placement? Is there anything the local authority can do to promote local foster carers by giving them more concessions or benefits? Because that really will not just fix placement stability and give people children secure homes, it will also change their education, which will change their lives long after they've left care.
Thanks, Susan. I think that, yeah, that is a really good point just on the back of that. I think, you know, for those of you that don't work in education or, you know, don't work in virtual schools, it's really, really difficult to actually people underestimate the importance of, you know, the lack of quality foster carers in a local area. It's going back to the would it be good enough for my own child? You know, we work with children who move schools far too many times, and it's genuinely not their choice. It is, you know, it's not a well thought through plan to move a child 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times over, you know, the course of a couple of years. A child that has to move house and has to move school, even once, if that was your child, you know, you'd be fighting that, wouldn't you? You'd be fighting that decision. And our children do move schools lots and lots of times. And, you know, as virtual heads, it's part of our role to support social workers to find schools in different areas. So we're virtual heads in one area and we're responsible for the children in care to our area, but they can be living, so 40%, I would say, is probably average. In each local authority, 40% of children in care do not attend schools in that local authority in which they are in care. They're in local authorities, they might even be the neighbouring one, but you're still then dealing with another local authority set of systems, another set of teams. So just, if that's one thing to really, you know, to really think about, actually, when people are talking about placement stability and sufficiency of foster care placements or children's homes in local areas, it's such a massive impact on that child's life in a much bigger way than I think you imagine initially. Okay, anything else we need to not do? I'm going to go to Leah first, then to your good self.
I just wanted to add to that as well. We use the term sufficiency strategies, and it wasn't me who coined this, and I can't remember where it was, but I won't take credit for it. Why aren't we talking abundancy strategies? We should have more than one choice for a child. It shouldn't be scrabbling around. And I know that is very ideological, and we are where we are. But I'd really like to see, and I would say this, wouldn't I, but why isn't the whole suite of options being considered when we're thinking creatively in strategic commissioning about what sufficiency might mean? And how can we bring more foster carers to the market? Could it be around a really creative way of using boarding? I would say that, wouldn't I? But we need to start thinking more creatively about sufficiency, thinking about abundancy, and therefore that knock-on effect and positive ripple effect for children in their education and their stability in their educational settings.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, to you.
Thanks very much. The reason why on the Stepladder Plus programme we start with literacy and numeracy is you cannot assume that actually young people in care will have those basic abilities in order to be able to pick up some of the wider things which we've heard about just now, and in fact which are involved in things like financial awareness. You know, because there is so much instability, so much insecurity, that's a really big issue. So what we've done, we've introduced a parallel course which works with Stepladder, which is called Stepping Forward. Stepping Forward, you'll hear more later on after the tea break about the sports area in particular, and a little bit on the arts as well. But what we're doing is providing an introduction to the performing arts, because the performing arts have an ability to bring in a little bit more confidence and communication skills, the ability to work with other people and be a bit more sociable, which we feel is a really, really key part for young people who've been in care from that point of view. We work with Tring Park School and we developed a 6-stage development for that. It's also incentivized learned as well. And, you know, we found that those skills are really transferable. So if you want to go into the workplace and to be able to communicate with people you work with, or to be able to understand people maybe in the building line or in many, many walks of life, actually the skills you learn through actually learning about the introduction performing arts actually provide you with those transferable skills. So I'd like to say that actually this is not just an academic issue. This is an issue about giving confidence, about actually doing something about tackling that insecurity. And we believe with the combination of Stepladder Plus and Stepping Forward that we can do that.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Carolyn now for the next audience involvement thing.
Yeah, we might need you guys to help in a bit. So we really wanted to try and make this interactive. We were supposed to be on the tables and we've had to kind of make some adaptations. So please just go with the flow. We're winging it. So it's how do we create meaningful change? So over on the right here, those themes I talked about at the beginning, funding and resources, stability and so on, they're the challenges. Obviously there's more challenges, but they're kind of the themes. And what I want you to do with the people, or the people around you in small groups if you can, or particularly you guys at the back if you want to come forward and join some people. Pick one of the challenges and then discuss possible solutions that you could come up with for that particular challenge. And obviously people have different roles and experiences which you can really discuss and know what works. And then your job then will be to take one practical action that can be taken immediately, like tomorrow or going forward. So I've picked this area, I'm aware of this, we've discussed it, and then what we'll do is hopefully we'll give you some talking time and then we'll have some Roman mics and see if we can get some of those solutions shared. Does that make sense? In Scouse. Right, so please, and also we've all been sitting down for a long time, it's been lunch, there's been a lot of listening. Don't be afraid to stand up and move and chat on your feet. It's 3:29, I'm literally giving you 10 minutes max and then we'll wrap up. Yeah, we'll do that at the end. The pledge tree, as you leave, and we've got those different solutions, you'll be taking your own personal pledge and sticking it to the tree as well. But that's the end. So please get up, move, chat, and we'll do some Roman mics in about 10 minutes. Thanks.
Okay, everybody. I hope you've had some really fruitful conversations. I'm going to, I believe, come round now with a roving mic.
Yes.
And find out some of the thoughts that you've been having. So, yeah, I think I might just come to you. There we go. In teaching, we call it the no hands up rule.
Is anyone ready to feedback
just
on the
gather
theme?
for a second. All right, is there anybody here who's got any thoughts they'd like to share?
If you want to go, or...
Wow. Hello, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. So I do research in psychiatry at King's College London Hospital, and the topic that we picked was emotional and mental health needs. And we discussed the impact of trauma throughout kids in foster care and how their attachments get built within those relationships. So I think it's so important to shape the kids and also be wary of the amount of issues that they experience, because as positive it is, then as positive it impacts it, and then the other way around. So I think it's really important to engage in a positive manner.
Thank you, yes, and engage in a positive manner. And I think sometimes we can dwell too much on the negatives around our children, but our children come into care with the same bell curve of achievement, ability as any child, and there's every chance they could go to university. Got one at the moment at Oxford reading dentistry. So it is keeping that positivity and absolutely championing best outcomes. I'm going to come over here because I know this lady. Heather. Hello, Zoe. Do you want to introduce where you're from?
Hello, I'm Zoe Byrne. I'm with the Attachment Research Community. We're a national charity and we work very closely with virtual school heads. I think in our group, we absolutely talked about aspiration and being aspirational for care experienced young people. We talked about, actually, we didn't really get to the subject because we were introducing each of our organisations, and the point that came out was we want there to be knowledge of what everyone is doing, because there is so much available for young people, but are we getting that across? And then I think a really strong point about listening to young people and having that lived experience.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's slightly overwhelming, isn't it? You just hear all of these amazing good practice and wondering how we can tap into all of it and make sure our children all benefit. I'm coming round here and everybody's doing their shoelaces and all that sort of thing. Right, you look like you might have something to say.
Oh my goodness. Well, actually, I was really interested what you were saying about the computer, the AV1 robot.
I can talk about it. So we were talking about the disrupted education and how an easy fix is if people just talk to each other. So for a lot of our young people, they do experience a lot of, we call it placement, but home moves. And as a virtual school, we often are last to hear or late to the table in finding out. What we've done as a virtual school is we have these AV1 robots, which are about that big. They look like something that's been created by Apple, and they sit in the classroom in the place of where the child would have sat. They're a phenomenal piece of kit. The bit that's brilliant is during the academic work, the children can still learn when they're in the home and away. So they might have lived in Southend and been moved to Middlesbrough. It means that they can still access their curriculum while a school is being sourced. But the bit that is incredible is at lunchtime, playtime, after school clubs, before school, the children can see their friends, and that is the most powerful bit. They're connecting and they're maintaining those relationships. And they're also seeing that the teacher actually still cares, and they're having those conversations, because we all say that education is so powerful and so valuable and so important. And then the child moves and they're like, well, I thought it was really powerful. I thought it was really important. I thought it was all these things, and I haven't got a school. And they do that 4, 5, 7 times. So the value isn't there. And I thought it was really interesting this morning when we were in a workshop about housing, and we were talking about social housing, and yourself mentioned, why are we talking about social housing? Why aren't we talking about mortgages and aspirations for these young people? And I think sometimes it does come back to the language that we're using and the messages that our young people pick up.
Yes, we mustn't reinforce a deficit model, must we? We can slip in so easily. We've heard people talking about apprenticeships today as well. And of course, some of our children, that would be absolutely the right thing. But I don't think we should shy away from wanting them to have a university experience. Let's see who else there might be over here. Can I come to you, sir?
You might regret that. No. Oh, bless. No, but my point is on apprenticeships, actually, and for someone with GCSEs that owns an apprenticeship training company, I don't personally hold as much credential in educational outcomes. I think that what we need to do to support our children is help them become more work ready and help them develop their soft skills and readiness to kind of enter the workplace. I think for me it's wonderful that the government have increased the bursary to £3,000 for young care experienced people to do an apprenticeship, but I don't think it's enough yet. And I think that there should be an organisation, maybe such as a couple of people on the panel maybe, who might launch some sort of bursary for people to go on and do an apprenticeship. But these guys were talking about far more better things than all of that, to be honest.
Well, we might come to them. And one of the things we do as a virtual school is we've set up a virtual college, and I know that I'm not alone in that in our virtual school. And we have an executive board that works with the local business, and we provide something called Better Futures, which is training for businesses. And John Lewis is on that panel, and a variety of other big businesses. So that message is starting to get out, and we're really keen that we'll have an attachment-aware business training model, just like we've got the attachment-aware schools, so that we can really explain to business what it is they need to do differently for our children, because there's no point in them getting a job and all of social care and all of you amazing people getting them into a job if they then don't thrive when they're there.
Right, so we've got literally 30 seconds. People are starting to come in now. So very last one, thank you, and then we need to...
30 seconds. In terms of high aspirations, just in case anyone doesn't know, an alternative to what I like to call full-time university is a degree apprenticeship. And I work with the top 50 law firms, and the benefit especially for care experienced children is it's guaranteed employment for a full 6 years. And by the end of the 6 years, they could be earning as much as 180,000.
Can I ask that you get in touch with Navish, because that is something that virtual school heads would be very, very interested in. Thank you ever so much for putting up with me putting this in front of you, and thank you for all your amazing feedback.
Thanks, Suzanne. So, final activity then for that. I know we've now got interlopers that have come here that are joining in the end of our session. So, just if you can we're not sure if there are actual pledge cards out there yet, or that we've said maybe right on the back of your badge. Are they definitely there? So one thing, concrete, practical thing you are going to do tomorrow in your job that's within your capacity and capability that you can do that could improve things education-wise for our children. Thank you very much. See you back in here at 4 o'clock.